Imagine finding irrefutable evidence and he still denies it. So this story doesn't fall apart all at once. It's more like a quiet drift in a direction you don't really notice until you look up and realise how far off course you are. This woman had been married for about 1.5 years, together just over 3 years in total. Not brand new, but still in that phase where you expect things to feel steady. Except the last year hadn't been that at all. There was a lot going on at once. She was helping care for a family member, work was intense, and just life stacking up in ways that don't leave much room for anything else. And it started showing up in the relationship. More arguments, more tension, less time actively connecting. And it wasn't one big issue, just everything pulling them in different directions. And then one day, she caught him watching porn. Not in a casual passing way, it turned into a whole conversation, a proper one. They sat down and talked it through and landed on the same conclusion. Things had slipped and they both needed to put more effort back into the relationship, which on paper sounds like a turning point. But then nothing really changed. A couple of months went by and instead of things improving, his behaviour started shifting in other ways. Staying out late drinking, being a bit off with his phone. There was a female co-worker that he started talking to, and that just didn't feel right. Nothing obvious, nothing that she could point to directly, but just enough to notice. And she didn't bring it up again, partly because the first conversation hadn't led anywhere, and also because she just didn't have the energy for another round of the same thing. So instead, she did something quieter. She pulled back. Not in a confrontational way, just less available, less engaged, creating a bit of emotional distance so that she could get through everything else she was dealing with. And weirdly, that's what got his attention. He noticed the shift, sat her down, said they needed to talk. And this time it felt different. It was one of those conversations where you start to feel a bit of relief halfway through. Like maybe this is the reset. Maybe this is the moment where things actually turn around. He seemed present, engaged, like he understood what was at risk. She left that conversation feeling hopeful again, which makes what happened next feel almost unreal. Because about a week later, she came home from work and he wasn't there. As she walked into the living room, she saw it. A used condom. Just there, on the floor in front of their couch. Not something missed from days ago, this was fresh. Not something you could explain away. And it's just sitting there, like it hadn't even crossed his mind to hide it. And she kind of just stands there for a second. Because there's that moment where your brain tries to catch up. Like maybe there's another explanation. Maybe it's not what you think it is. Maybe you're misunderstanding what you're looking at. But there really wasn't one. Sometimes the truth is a pattern. It's just sitting there, waiting for you to notice. When he got home, she confronted him straight away. And apparently the moment he saw her face, it was obvious. He knew, she knew. But he still denied it. For hours. Just sticking with it, even though there wasn't really anything to defend. Eventually he admitted it. He'd slept with someone. Not a friend, not a co-worker, just an acquaintance, someone that she didn't know. And it hadn't been a one-time thing. A few times over the past few months, which lines up almost perfectly when everything started feeling off. And what stood out the most wasn't even the admission, it was how he acted. There was no panic, there was no urgency to fix anything, no visible remorse, just acceptance that he'd been caught. Like the outcome was inconvenient, but not unexpected. Sometimes people don't act different, they just stop putting in the effort into hiding who they are. She asks him how long, and he told her. She asked him how he could be so careless, how he could bring someone into their home and not even bother to clean up after himself. At that point, she actually laughed. Not because it was funny, just because it was so absurd. Like, out of everything, That was the part that broke through. The realization that he hadn't just cheated, he'd done it in their space and left behind evidence like it didn't matter. I think that's the moment where something just clicks into place. Because it's not confusion anymore, it's clarity. So, they're getting a divorce. And the way she described it, it didn't feel like a long, drawn-out decision. It felt immediate, certain. Like whatever she needed to know, she found out the second that she walked into that room. Honestly, she even said it felt like some kind of intervention. Not in a big, obvious way, just the timing of it. The fact that it happened right after that conversation where she started to believe that things might actually change. Almost like the truth made sure that it didn't get missed. I don't know. There's something about that. Because sometimes you don't get closure through a conversation, you get it through a moment that makes the situation impossible to understand. And once that happens, the decision kind of makes itself. But I guess the question is, if you had that kind of clarity, would you trust it straight away? Or would you try and explain it away? Thanks for listening to this episode of Quiet Betrayals. Catch you next time.